Hi, everybody. Welcome in again. Fun fact for the night, baked beans are actually not baked. Now let's start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Ray's Rewind with Buschman and Drew.
Jansen. That is into center field. Here comes Kiermaier. Phillips has tied the game. Arose Arena coming around. Throw home. Now he stumbles. But the ball gets away. Tampa Bay wins it. Brett Phillips, Game 4 hero.
The sickest Tampa Bay Rays podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome in, everybody. It is another episode of the Rays Rewind podcast, courtesy of the Sick Media Podcasting Group. Of course, we are the sickest Tampa Bay Rays podcast in all the land. Of course, go to our YouTube page, the Sick Podcast, Rays Rewind. Hit the subscribe and notification bell when new episodes drop, which they're going to be dropping frequently and everything now. Thanks for watching our latest episode. It's got over 1,000 views. Maybe it's because we've been starting to drink on the show and be more loose. I don't know. Whatever it is, let's continue it going. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into our last show. But we've got a good show for you tonight. Of course, Rays voting the sweep over the weekend with the Baltimore Orioles winning a nail-biter 4-3 yesterday afternoon. Same old Rays. This past couple of series. The A series was kind of frustrating. This one, I wasn't expecting anything but on this one, Drew. I don't know about you with the Orioles series. I didn't really think they were gonna sweep or take two out of the three, to be honest with you. I just the way they've been playing, and hey, we got Josh Lowe back.
You mean the walk-off wins, the nail biter wins against the A's,
which I want to talk about before we get into the Orioles series. Where look, look, when the Rays win, it's good. Mm-hmm. But when people are celebrating walk-off wins against bad teams, it's not really something to celebrate. You should be beating these teams outright instead of having to walk off against them. And look, I know it's great for team morale. Jose Siri, clapping twice when he hit that home run in the ninth. That was great. But you should be beating these teams outright instead of having to come from behind to beat the A's. And by the way, thank you for the play-by-play announcer for the Oakland A's, who, by the way, is one of the worst play-by-play announcers out there, for calling that for Jose Siri, by the way, giving him the good juju by saying her call. Yeah. But you should be winning these teams outright. Like the White Sox, you should be winning against outright. And now going into Miami, where the 2-game set, you should be winning these games outright. But I just know that Miami's probably going to give Tampa trouble. And it's just, with the way the team's playing right now, nothing really surprises me anymore if they struggle against bad teams. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the Athletics, the team like the Athletics, first of all, I think they're playing much better than, last year they were kind of the laughing stock. They were, obviously they were this year's White Sox.
Yeah.
Or last year's White Sox, excuse me. But this year I think they're definitely playing above expectations, and good for them. But what makes them what makes them potentially frustrating to play is when, they get a lead. They have a really good bullpen. They have some big arms in the bullpen, especially at the end. Mason Miller. There was a stat. I want to say that it was some sort of stat. Either they were leading after a certain amount of innings, or something along those lines. Like when they are leading after a certain amount of innings, maybe 7. I think they had lost maybe 1 game. Or something like that. They were really tough. And so when you play the Athletics, they get up or they scratch. On Tuesday night was a great example where they didn't do anything all game, the Athletics offense, except for that one homer from Andahar after the air and the walk. And then that's all they needed. And, because their bullpen shut things down. And of course the Rays offense doesn't scare anybody. So, I wasn't if compared to the White Sox, who aren't good, save maybe one starter, Crochet, and I guess the other guy that shut us down, the guy that pitched overseas, Eric Friday. I guess I'm
I'm
not
not good with
pronouncing that
names,
right.
but I know you're talking
But
about.
their whole team is bad. Like
Yeah,
their bullpen's terrible. Their offense isn't good. They're not good. They're not good. Most of their pitchers are not good. So when compared to the Athletics, I wasn't expecting a sweep of the Athletics. I thought it was certainly possible. I'm not as surprised that it was a 2 of 3, but the fact that like it's
that
so
we had to
easily
come back from behind for both of
it's
those wins. It's
it,
like it's not
it could have been really bad. Like it's so
right.
easily could have been bad. And I think
They could have
why
gotten swept. They could have gotten swept if the late inning heroics by Siri, I want to get into in a little bit, like helped them out. But like if those moments didn't happen, we'd be talking about they were swept by one of the worst team. Another one of the worst teams in baseball would be the A's. And then you go into Baltimore,
yeah,
you lose that series, so you're
vibes are
losing.
bad.
Yeah, vibes are bad. Every like that's a could have been happened against the Athletics, which you got to kind of bow your head
I,
and say thank you to Jose Siri for making those big plays and everything. But it could have been a lot worse.
the,
It
I
could.
think the, I think in the context of the season as a whole, if you look at like that series against the Athletics, if that series would have taken place at the beginning of May, right? Like when the City Connect stuff, I think we would have been like, oh man, what a shot in the arm. Like,
Yeah.
things were bad and they, hey, they took care of business, a couple walk-off wins. Like this is the jolt. Hopefully it's a jolt of energy that team needed. I feel like we've used that we've been in that scenario enough times already this season. And even though it's only early June, that it almost feels like, all right, like, you know, is 2 walk-off wins against the Athletics. Like, yeah, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
But how many like jolts of energy does this team continues like keep needing to have in order to get back on the right track? Like it's just not like like that whole scenario loses its luster after the third or fourth time, especially when
Right.
it's been like a month. I mean, they had the rough homestand and it was like, oh man, thank goodness they have an off day. Well, it's like, well, they had an off day before playing Kansas City too,
Mm-hmm.
and they had an off day after Kansas City. It's like, man,
And now we have an off day
they
against before going into Miami.
yeah, it's like
Before coming back home.
they just
Yeah.
need to reset, like get away from baseball. Well, they come out and are lifeless against the Athletics. So like,
Mhm.
I don't know what is going to give this team the energy it needs or to help get this team on the right
I
track.
don't think there's gonna be a shot in the arm that we need. I don't think it's coming anytime soon. If it is, it's not. Look, DeLuca had okay. Listen, when DeLuca was a shot in the arm.
Yep, and
Having
he came through big time.
yeah, and having Josh Lowe back shot in the arm. Hopefully, he stays healthy for the
City Connect.
yeah. And I think those shots in the arm they're great, but they're not. They haven't been consistent enough to where it's like, hey, we need to get on a winning streak. Like the last winning
Yeah.
streak we had was like almost a month ago.
Yeah, it was that City Connect
It's a
streak,
City Connect streak, yeah. So it's
and you
going
knew
in,
that was going to end. But
but
you're just
the
like
thing is,
hoping, like, all right,
we
we don't have to go on a 7-game winning streak every week,
right.
or every 2 weeks. But
But
it's
we all, I mean, obviously, we all knew it was going to end. But like, we would say, okay, the winning streak is over. You lost that one. Let's get back on another winning streak. Be more
right.
consistent in winning series, and it hasn't been like that. It's been more like, okay, we're going to peter along. We're going to struggle against bad teams, and then, we talked about this on the last show. Like the schedule coming up is very brutal.
Mhm.
It's a brutal schedule to to see it, and it's just like, okay, you have an off day today, and then you have 2 games against Miami, which I'm predicting a split with Miami.
Well, they get Luzardo, like they're one good pitcher.
So yeah,
You
it's
know,
split. So
yeah,
Pepio's going tomorrow. Is he going against
with
Lazard?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Pepio tomorrow, and then probably Eflin on Wednesday.
Okay. So
I mean, they got the advantage. I mean,
yeah,
Luzardo's great, but he's not pitching great this year.
but
Um,
it's just the fact that the offense hasn't been it's been inconsistent and petering along. It's like they're going up against a good pitcher. Look, we almost got no hit by the A's by a rookie.
yeah,
So coming into Miami, look, having Pepio on the mound is great. His last start wasn't all that great either. So
mm,
I just don't think. I say a split. I say a split.
yeah. I mean, I think in the 2-game, it's always weird.
I hope it's a split. As if we get swept by the Marlins, it's just like, okay, we're coming back home. Then we got to play Baltimore again.
Yeah,
It's,
and Baltimore, that series against Baltimore, you got their 3 bottom pitchers.
mm-hmm.
And that's past series. This series coming up, their Rays get looking ahead. They get Cole Irvin again on Friday, who shut them down for the most part. Grayson Rodriguez, Corbin Burns, and that Suarez guy. So, um, you know, yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think I don't want to say you have to win 2 here, but I think I think you got to win 2. Like I think they have to. I mean, it's
I think
I
it's
go back.
crucial too. I think
Yeah,
I
it's
agree.
crucial.
It's crucial too. If you coming off the day off after getting that last game of the series against Baltimore, you come into Miami and you take the two games. That's a good way of coming back home
Mhm.
and having a little bit of momentum and having kind of like a good feel goodness in the locker room going against Baltimore. But it's just like I don't know, man. I just my confidence level with this team is slowly just deteriorating like every single week. And just seeing the level of play. It's just like
Right.
you know what I mean? So I hope they take 2. I think it's crucial they take 2 because just coming back and then playing Baltimore again, it's just like,
Yeah.
if you
So, do you want me to tell you something that's gonna depress you probably?
you know what? I'm all ears. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, so last time the last time the Rays, I would say, had a comfortable win. And that's the other thing too, is like the offense is bad. And
Mhm.
even if they win games, the offense is bad, right, usually. So I mean, you look back, if you go on ESPN and look at their schedule, I
Mhm.
mean, every win since literally since yesterday. I mean, there is not a single win. I mean, they had a 3-run win over Kansas City but that was because of the triple by Brandon Lau late in the game, right? In the 7th inning, I think, right?
Yep. Yep.
Uh, New York, they had a 7-2 win at home on a Saturday against Nestor Cortez, but they were only up 4-2 going into the 7th, and they, tacked on a few at the end there. So that made it nice, a little more comfortable.
Mhm.
I would say May 6th is really the last time they had a comfortable win, which was against the Chicago White Sox when they won 8-2, where they got out to a lead and it really wasn't close at all at any point. I mean, you literally have to go back, and I've kind of been keeping track of this in my mind a little bit because it occurred to me last month that it felt like anytime the Rays, because the run differential is so bad,
Yeah.
and you keep hearing like, "Oh, well, they're lucky to be 500 or around 500 with their run differential the way it is because it's one of the worst in the league." And
It's I'm looking at it right now. It's pretty
it's
bad.
because all the wins, I mean, 80% of the wins that they've had this year are like 2 runs, 3
Right.
runs, 1 run. I mean, they had a 9-4 win over the Giants in April on April 14th, and I'm not seeing a single. I mean, in the month of April, which we know month April was bad, that was their only. They had one other win that was by 3 runs or more in
Drew,
the whole month. Like, and
do you
that trend's continued through May. So this team, even when they win games against the Athletics or against Baltimore in the last game, it's like that's by the skin of their teeth. So you rarely feel like, wow, they're playing really great.
mhm.
It's almost like they're lucky to escape with a
I get
win
that.
against a good team versus,
I get that feeling every single time they play. Is they have a comfortable lead, but then the bullpen seems to just give it up.
yeah,
So
or
it's not like it's
they're
like, oh
doing
yeah,
just enough to win.
right. Or hey, we're heading into the ninth. I should feel good. Or we're heading into the eighth, and I feel good about this lead because the way our bullpen's been holding up everything, and they haven't been. And the funny thing is, I'm looking at the wild card standing right now. Like they're not at. They're only 4.5 out.
I know.
Like
Which
all the other teams, like above us, are like they're under 500 as well, except for the Red Sox, who are they're at 500. Everybody else, like the Rangers, the Tigers, and us, we had like the same record.
mhm.
It's crazy to me. Like they're still kind of in the thick of it, even though they're not playing like they should be in the thick of it.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. I mean, they're still in it. I mean, and what's crazy is you look at like if they were in the National League, which is always fun to compare, but they'd be a half game out of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, it's almost like relative to the rest of the league, they're not the rest of Major League Baseball. They're not necessarily a bad team. It's just that relative to their division, they're certainly not looking great because
Right.
the division's out of hand, and it's
You
clear that
know,
the
you know,
Yankees or
Ralph, you're
Orioles.
not a bad guy. You're
Yeah,
just You're not really a bad guy. You're just a bad guy.
It's just and I think the expectations were so much higher.
Mhm.
Even the most pessimistic of Rays fans, I don't think felt like didn't think that the team would struggle this much early on. And I know that earlier in the month of May, I believe I saw that the Rays had the toughest remaining schedule left of any team in Major League Baseball. I'm sure. I don't know if that's changed at all, but I'm sure if it has, it's not by a lot. So, yeah, that's the other thing. Is like everything we've seen in the first 2 months, this team is not good enough to be a playoff team. It's more of like we just know base historically this team should be better. However, they have not shown that so far, and now they're going to have to do that. They're going to have to show us against the league's toughest remaining schedule,
Mhm.
with, like, as you mentioned, really good teams coming up. You got the Cubs, you have the Orioles for 4, you have the Cubs, you have the Braves
Y
at the end of
y
next week, which I will be
I think they
in
got the
attendance.
Yankees again too.
Yeah, I'll be in attendance in Atlanta for 2 of those 3 games. So,
Nice.
yeah, I'm very excited. So, I I am still not optimistic. I think that Josh Lowe and Zach Eflin coming back this week is great. I think sadly we're at the point where Taylor Walls coming back is like, hey,
Which
this is going to be
which I wanted to ask you, with him coming up soon, who's going down?
well. I know they sent Arana down today, right?
Right.
So
Oh, yeah, for
Arana's
Josh Lowe.
down.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know. I mean, I think they could. I'd have to look at their current roster because at the moment they sent Aranda down. I mean, unless there's an injury of some sort, I mean, it would have to be. I think it would have to be. It would have to be DeLuca. I think because I really don't think they're going to send Palacios down. I mean, like he's just so valuable because he can play,
Yeah, but
infield and
DeLuca's just
outfield,
been
and
so
and I
good
think
though.
yeah, but he's been really cool. He's been not, I don't want to say bad because yeah, I think he's a good player and he's played well overall, but like he's not been good the last few weeks. So it's one of those things where they have they have several lefties coming up. They play 3 lefties in a row between the Marlins and the Orioles. So I think you could see, okay, they want DeLuca in there for the lefties, and then hoping he picks it up. But if he continues to be cold, I think you could see Taylor Walls come up, DeLuca go down, because you got Palacios that can cover right field and left field. I guess he can cover second base and apparently shortstop in a pinch, and then you have Josh Loback who can play right center, Jose Siri who's playing well obviously, and then Randy, and then Harold Ramirez. I guess I mean, unless there's a trade. That's the other thing is like, unless there's
See,
a trade of like someone like Harold Ramirez, um,
who I who's been
or somebody
absent?
else.
When's the last
Yeah,
time when's the last time Harold's played?
yeah. I mean, he was in the lineup. I mean, he'll play a lot this week. He'll play. I'm guaranteed. I'm sure he'll be in the lineup today, tomorrow, and Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. And he was in there Sunday. So we'll see. But I mean,
I
unless there's a trade of somebody, my vote is DeLuca at this point, just
Mhm.
because Palacios, he's just been such a great. He's been doing it all. I think. I mean, it's not like he's been the most incredible player on the planet, but he's been good
Just sitting right.
wherever he hits in, yeah, wherever he hits in the order, he can play multiple positions. He's just a great energy guy. Like he's got a lot of those intangibles too. You can just see it when you watch him. Like he's a guy you want in there. Like I think he should be in the lineup as often as possible, personally. Um,
I
so
can agree with you, about I'm starting to think about it now with the DeLuca thing because Siri's been playing better and
yeah,
hitting better.
yeah.
So it's almost
I
like
don't know.
flip flop. Like DeLuca came in, made Siri look bad. Now it's like flip flop to where Siri's playing good. DeLuca's kind of cooled off. So yeah, he would probably be the odd man out because
Yeah, they'll
Josh
probably
Lowe.
get bailed out with some injury or something and not have to actually make a tough decision.
I
But
mean, hell, send Randy down. Randy's just
yeah, I mean, I can see them also doing a trade because we all have said like eventually they're going to have to make a trade
Well,
because
what I would say Ramirez would be the trade I would do. I mean, with the
mhm.
just the
If they can
value,
find somebody for him, but or
right?
something.
Because with the value, I mean, if the value of Randy right now is not great at
No,
all,
no.
so I think Harold's like the the man they would probably go to say, "Hey, we're going to pull the trigger on this trade." That way, I mean, to me, it would make sense to trade him because you could probably bring in maybe a reliever,
Yeah.
and off of it, maybe
Yeah.
whoever's available. But
Maybe. I don't know. It's really tough to. It's gonna be tough to pin down. I mean, I don't know exactly. I know I read that Taylor Walls' timing of coming back up to the team is basically just dependent on, hey, how he looks on defense, his explosiveness on defense. I think he's actually been hitting the ball pretty well, which is crazy to think that he's had this injury or was dealing with some issues for a long time, like even while he was playing last year. And so to think that like he was as good as he was on defense with this and these issues is kind of crazy. So I'm actually kind of excited to see what he looks like fully healthy. But yeah, I mean, they're going to have another tough decision to make. I mean, they obviously are going to have to make a tough call to get, they can't get Junior Caminero up here. I know he's hurt, but like before, because they just had so many great players that there was not a spot for him. But they're going to find a spot for Taylor Walls. So somebody's got to go. And it's going to be somebody that, we like.
Here's what I'm thinking too, and this might Walls comes up, does well. You could maybe dangle Walls as a trade piece.
I don't know.
No,
I don't know. I think it's because we've heard from the time he came up in 21, like they just think his defense is so good, and like,
but his
and
bat
he's
isn't all that
but
great.
he's what's crazy is that like, and I know that it's not always like a clean transition, right? Like, just because somebody hits in the minors doesn't mean they're going to hit in the majors, but like,
Exactly.
you look at his minor league. I'm trying to find. Of course, it's not on this page, but like you look at his minor league batting. I mean, he's a 272 hitter in the minors, 27 homers. I mean, I'm looking at in Durham in 2021, played 52 games, hit 8 home runs. I mean, he hit 10 home runs in 96 games in 2019. Like, he hit 300 in some of the lower levels. Like, he's shown a propensity to hit well at other levels.
Mm-hmm.
So I think with his defense, with how highly they rate his defense, I think that they would. I think it could be a situation where he's more valuable to them than they would be to other teams, in my opinion. Like, they might value him more highly. I think they would, and I think he's cheap too. So like, I don't know if that's the guy and he's a switch hitter. Like, I don't know. I see. If they're going to trade somebody, I think it's going to be one of those people that, is
I
like
think
a Harold or.
I think coming up, especially in the catcher position too, with Alex Jackson,
Yeah.
I think Pinto is going to be coming back pretty soon. Even though his defense isn't all that great, but he is hitting well in the minors. It's just we've talked about this on previous shows about the offense just being so stagnant, just being so abysmal. It's like, well, you're bringing up guys who career-wise haven't really hit all that great transitioning from the minors to the pros. So it's like maybe you get the highest value out of them and then make it. Look, if you're going to make a run for this, if you're really still in it by the trade deadline and you've got a couple of carrots to dangle, like if it's the Taylor Walls, if it's Harold Ramirez, if it's whoever, to get the maximum value of what you can get back to make a run, I'm open for it because, we also talked about it too. It's like this team is going to look very different come 2025. So
come August.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I mean,
yeah.
if you can get the maximum, if you have a blockbuster trade in hand to where you can get pieces that you need to really make a run for it, I say go for it. The Rays aren't known for doing that type of stuff at the. I mean, look, the Nelson Cruz deal. I mean, that blew up in their face, but like I'm talking about like a mega deal.
Yeah.
Just to kind of make a look. Either way, if you're not going to pull the trigger to make a deep run, if you're still in it by the trade deadline, okay. But if you're like you're hanging in there, and you have something that's going to be dangled in front of you to where you can't resist, where you've got some offers in to where it's going to put them over the edge, just pull the trigger, man, and just do it. Just do it. Like, stop coveting the prospects and the guys that you think are so good and so, so vital pieces to this team. It's like, are they really? You guys trade them away for prospects every couple of years. I say just do it, man. Especially if you're especially if you're hanging around in the wild card spot. Especially if you're hanging around.
I'm starting to prospect again though. I'm getting a little. For a while I was like, and I don't care, like the Manzardo trade and the Nelson Cruz trade, and I was like, this is great. We're finally going for it, getting some guys. But I'm starting to get back to the prospects that I like. I mean,
Yeah.
Junior, Carson Williams, Xavier Isaac. I mean, I have MLB TV being out of state, out of market, so that's the only way I can watch the Rays, and so I check in on the minor league teams pretty much every night, trying to see these guys hit. And Chandler Simpson, like, man, even Braden Taylor, like, I'm getting very excited about these guys coming up with the team. So, I mean, as long as they can improve without dipping into those players to trade away, I'm set.
Well, that's going to happen if they. I can say right now they're going to be sellers, but if they become buyers, like a sneaky buyer, like, hey, the Rays are actually going to be buying in this, then a couple of those guys that are top are going to be,
maybe
they're going to be going. They're
depends on
gone.
who's available, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Caminero is going to be
Yeah.
off limits. They're not going to.
Yeah.
He's not available at all. But I'm talking about the other guys that are in the system that could be available to maybe.
It would have
help.
to be a pretty big deal, I think.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about a mega deal. I'm not talking
yeah.
about like a ticky tack little small deal. I'm talking about gargantuan type of deal. Like offer you
Shohei.
Yeah, no,
Not now, but
not now.
Last year.
I'm talking about an offer you can't refuse. Like I'm talking about that, but they have to be still hanging around by the trade deadline for that to happen. If not, then you can just keep going your merry little way and play for fourth place.
I think the most realistic outcome is that they do the whole like sell and buy scenario.
Combination
where they give away, trade away maybe like an Eflin or somebody that's to get value back, and then they also kind of like trade a minor leaguer or somebody to kind of get maybe a marginal, like a guy on the margins, a guy on the edges that can maybe go to AAA and then come up later in the in the season or something. I don't know, but yeah, I mean they got to take care of business, because I mean if they struggle again in the next few weeks, I mean I think it's clear like they are on the edge. Like I was texting a buddy of mine on I think the Athletics, the game that they beat the Athletics in at the end in extras, and I mean I was like their season, I felt like in that moment, if they lost that game and lost 2 or 3 of the Athletics, this season was like, we could just say, okay, like, let's not fool around anymore. Like, let's start looking at this like we're sellers. Like I'm done trying to convince myself that this team can
look after the schedule that we have the next couple of weeks. I mean,
I know it's very possible.
It's very possible. We could be revisiting that conversation, going, okay, I think it's maybe time to.
It's can we talk a little bit about the Baltimore series?
Yeah, I mean, I
have a couple thoughts. So
yeah,
I did not expect them to do any better than what they did. Similar to when they went to New York at the middle of April. I think you were out that week, but I remember saying to the co-host we had, I was like, listen, it's one of if they win more than one game, I'll be pleasantly surprised. And they could have won all 3, but they only end up winning 1. And this one I did not expect. I expected the same. I expected 1, maybe a sweep, because Baltimore's you just look at Baltimore, you're like, all right, they are a better team. They have better pitching. They have a better bullpen. This year they have a better bullpen. Their lineup's great. Gunnar Henderson. I hate watching Gunnar Henderson play because it just reminds me of Wander the whole time, because it's like they have their shortstop that is going out there and
true,
different profile, but like we had that shortstop. We had that shortstop that could have won a batting title, and that was going to be a perennial all-star that was super young and was signed long-term, and he was the guy. And now I got to watch Gunnar Henderson be like the new big young shortstop that's going to take over the American League, and he's setting records and hitting all these home runs, and it just frustrates me.
You have envy, I know. But
it frustrates me.
before
But
we get into the Orioles conversation,
yeah,
I know we don't talk about him as much as we used to, but he's posting on Instagram like he's coming back, like he thinks he's coming back. Like he's been posting on Instagram like him taking batting practice and posting inspirational quotes like he thinks he's coming back.
yeah.
It's
I mean,
it's the wildest thing.
I mean, we haven't had a larger discussion about this, and I think it's only really one that we need to have to actually dedicate a lot of time to if
Right.
things shake out to where he doesn't get charged or what's the next steps there. But I mean, I've personally in my personal life, I've discussed this a little bit with my wife about like, what if this happens? Like, what would this mean? I mean, it would be, and they've talked about it a little bit in the Tampa Bay Times too. I mean, I'm of the belief that if he doesn't get charged, assuming Major League Baseball says, there's a suspension. I mean, I think it's
He will end
realistic.
up like
He could do time served.
he will end up like Trevor Bauer.
Yeah, but the contract, I actually believe that if he doesn't get charged, I think that I think he'll play for the Rays again. I think, and I only say that because of the contract that they signed, because they would have no, I would imagine no pathway to get any sort of way out of that contract or any sort of
There's not, and he's
reduction.
still getting paid right now.
Yeah, and he would be due his money, and I think that because of that contract, they would basically force themselves to say, okay, he can come, he's coming back, and then they got to do the whole. I mean, it's going to be a massive PR thing, and I mean, there's all those ramifications. So I think the charges. I mean, I don't think he's going to get off. Like, I think that he will be charged and found guilty. So if that's the case, then it's a moot point, right? Like,
Right.
he's not coming back, and there's a whole legal side of the contract and what that means. But like, yeah, I mean,
Sorry, folks. We went down a
he's
rabbit hole.
he's posting these videos apparently, and like,
It's
showing him swings, and like, I mean, listen, it's gonna come. We're gonna figure something out in the summer. I think that Topkins said they have to prove the charges by like the middle of July. So
it's coming.
I mean, we'll find out. And I mean, then you have baseball suspension. So there's levels to it. But I mean, he's been out for over almost a year now. Like, it's very possible they could say, like, all right, time served. And then the Rays are going to have a decision to make. And I just think contract,
or trade him.
yeah, but what are you going to get for him? My prediction is that there are no charges, and he's good to go. I think that he's back in a Rays uniform, and then you have a whole nother mess to deal with. But again, doesn't matter because we don't know what's going to happen. Baltimore,
Sorry for that, folks. We went down a rabbit hole, folks. Sorry.
I think it's an interesting what if though.
It is
talked about because it could be pointless, but it's an interesting what if.
Well, before we actually we should talk about this because I'm just saying we haven't really heard much from.
No, he's not said one thing.
He hasn't said anything, and I think he fired his lawyers or whatever.
Yeah.
But like we haven't heard anything more from the Dominican Republic. We haven't heard anything. Like the last time we heard of was they're just waiting on what happens for that proceeding to happen.
Right.
Whatever's going to happen with that. We haven't heard anything else. Like I think we've heard they seized his assets or whatever. But other than that, there's really hasn't been any kind of development, and it's just the wildest thing because it's taking so long for this to wrap up and be like, okay, we're going to either go to trial or pressing charges, or the charges are being dropped, and it's just the wildest thing because if this was in the U.S., it'd be quick.
Yeah, it'd be done.
It'd be done.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to appear in court anymore. Or he doesn't
have to check. He doesn't have to check in anymore, which is so. If you're
I don't know,
not having him check in anymore, I'm not saying that's like a sign in a good direction for him, but it's definitely a good sign for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a positive for him. I don't know, but
I'm just thinking of if it does happen. But, yeah, we're going to continue to talk about this. But if it does happen to where he's not charged, if he's not charged and he's brought back, it's like the reception from the fans, and then the reception, like the Rays PR team has to like handle this with a fine tooth and comb. Like they have to like handle this the right way. unlike other PR things they've handled in the wrong way. Not to this level, but I'm talking about other things.
Oh
Like
yeah,
they have to handle this like, okay, he's coming back, and they're not trading him. He's coming back. He's going to be starting in the lineup. How are we going to make this so we're not taking the brunt of this into where we're trying to make him, we're trying to not make this the focus of everything, but it is going to be the focus. How we can just kind of make this a smooth transition where he's coming back, he's playing, and that's that. We're done. We're going to talk about this for a couple of weeks, and then it's the next news story on the day. Like that's the thing they have to worry about. If they bring him back and he's cleared of all charges, but it's that stigmata that he's a possible pedophile. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it could, there's a number of scenarios. It could be, again, all speculation, all what if,
Yep.
if he gets charged and is found guilty, that doesn't matter. But that's, that's an easy scenario to figure out.
Yeah.
I think it could be, because then baseball said they're waiting for the Dominican stuff to finish. So then I think baseball would either say, okay, time served,
Yeah.
or they'll give him a certain amount of games plus, including time served. And so it could be either he's eligible right away, or maybe they say, hey, we're going to keep him out through the end of this year. And then, he comes back into the league, or if the Rays decide to keep him or whatever, like come back in the league, it's under, spring training. There's a much more longer ramp up period. There's just a lot more
Yeah.
preparation for it, as opposed to like, okay, time served, he's good to go. And then the Rays got to figure out, okay, well, what do we do?
What do we do?
I think that also if that was the case, they would obviously say, okay, well, he's got to like get ready for the season. So that means, he's not coming straight to Tampa. I mean, he would be, extended spring training, or, the minors, he would, rehab assignment type of stuff. Like, I mean, there would be a build up. I think that if that were to happen, if he was to come back and they were to, have to do it, I think the biggest thing that I would want to see from him is, I think the fans, I think people would boo him. I think even in the Trop, I think he would get booed.
Yeah.
And I mean, he kind of does. I mean, he deserves it. I mean, he really screwed up a lot of things. And, so he would have negative reception, I think, even at home. I think that you would want to see tangible changes in personality, and
He would have to hire the best like team around him to make sure he doesn't
yeah
get any
that
kind of trouble.
well, that, and like, just, you keep hearing about how, like, oh, he actually wasn't very popular in the clubhouse, like guys didn't really like him that much. Like, he's gonna have to be a better teammate. Like, you're gonna have to see, like, he can't come back and be the same
Same guy.
kind of teammate, the same kind of guy. Like, he's got to be different, because
Mhm.
what was the point of, like, you didn't learn anything from this. And then that's even worse. Like, you're getting a second chance, and then you're screwing it up again by being a crappy teammate and being the same egotistical guy that apparently he was. Like, having, getting in arguments, like, swinging bats in the dugout, like things like that. Like, there has to be tangible changes that I think fans could see and you would hear about in the locker room potentially. Like, that's what I would want to see. And I think that's like mandatory. That's got to be mandatory for him. He would get relentlessly booed on the road. I mean, it would always be a thing. It would be a thing for him, I think, just as much as, like, I think the Astros players getting booed still. I think you would see that
Yeah,
for him.
that with him, and of course, folks, this is all what ifs, and we're
What
just
if? What if?
talking
Yeah,
about
we're just
scenarios. This is all
we're going down a
scenarios.
hypothetical. This is
Yeah,
fun.
that's a scenario where it's 1,000 times worse than what the Astros did. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
Down on the
he's
same
gotta be
level.
mentally prepared to like
Yeah,
face that too. And
yeah.
again, these are all what ifs and scenarios.
What ifs?
If the things that we've seen are trending towards, he might be in
Yeah, I
hospital.
mean,
You know what I mean?
if he's, I mean, I'm
Not saying,
sure.
look,
What else is he going
we
to think
don't
about?
condone the actions of Wander
No,
Franco,
no,
but
not
we're
at
just
all.
saying it could be trending that way where he's not charged and he's back in an MLB.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously, I don't expect him to think anything different about,
Yeah.
he's of course going to act as if he's good to go and he's got nothing to worry about. But I think he's going to get off? No, I think he's going to get charged and I think found guilty. But he would get booed relentlessly for years. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not going to change on the road. I think, I mean, if we want to get real hypothetical, I think over time, I think that the mood towards him in the local part of the in the local area in Tampa Bay, I think eventually would start. You would always have people that maybe view him negatively. I think that if time heals all wounds, I think you've seen players that have been found guilty of things that have come back and played, and
Although, Drew,
fans.
not
I
to this
know, I know. I'm just saying, but he wouldn't have been found guilty. It
Yeah,
would
but
have.
still, it's that
I realize that. I'm just saying. I think eventually,
it's that public
I think
perception.
you would start seeing the tide turning locally a little bit from a fan base perspective if he started performing well.
Mm.
That's all I'm saying. I don't saying that's the right thing to do. I'm just saying I think that you would start seeing it slowly turn more positive over time. And I'm talking like down the road, like next, like a year or two from now, like not
No, I get it.
immediately, but like it would be something that I don't think Tampa Bay's ever dealt with from a sports fandom. So it would be a very interesting and I mean very captivating scenario. But again, that's all hypothetical, and I don't think it's actually going to happen.
Look, we're not rooting for
Um,
this to happen, folks. We're just saying it's
I
hypotheticals and
I'm
rumors.
not I'm not really I don't really know if I'm rooting for anything in particular. I want to know the answer. Like I want to know the conclusion.
Right.
So I'm not even
I think a lot of people do. They just want the end all be all.
they just want closure. They just want
Yeah.
closure. Like, can I can I we just put him in the back in the rear view mirror for good? Or is this thing gonna be with us for the next several years because he's back or something like that? Like, I don't know. I just want to know. Okay, real quick, Baltimore. So I I am a big Kevin Cash fan. I texted you about this on Friday night.
You did.
I am a big Kevin Cash fan. I don't come on here and I think people that think Kevin Cash is a bad manager are stupid because he got the awards to prove it. And the team has arguably had the most sustained success of any Rays era under him. And it's not like he inherited a great team either. They were not good his first few years, and the cupboard was pretty bare. And they've been able to, and obviously that credit goes to the front office, but like he's created a culture here, and I think they've thrived under him. And he's the team's most winningest manager. I mean, like all the things point in the direction of he is a great manager. Do I think he is perfect? No. And it frustrates me when I feel like he makes obvious mistakes that seem to me, and again, other people like baseball people, and I'm sure the Rays coaching staff and front office, they're smarter. Obviously, they have the numbers. It makes more sense. But on Friday, I thought Kevin Cash made a huge mistake in the seventh inning when Columbe,
Column A.
Columbe, I don't know, Daniel Columbe, I'm butchering it, for the Orioles. They bring in a lefty. The Rays have runners on, I have it pulled up on ESPN. The Rays have runners on first and second with one out or with two outs. They had Siri, of course, got caught stealing second, so they could have had bases loaded. I digress. But they have runners on first and second with two outs. They're down two. Now, Kevin Cash said at the end of the game, after the game, because he was asked about it, that he thought Brandon Lau, it was best keeping him in there because the pull side homer, that was the best chance for a home run, was a pull side homer. I get that. Hitting it out to right field is, or left field is a nightmare right now with that wall. But you're talking about Brandon Lau. So they had a bunch of right-handed batters on the bench. They had Ahmed Rosario, Harold Ramirez, Randy Rosarena. I believe DeLuca was already in the lineup. So those are your three options off the bench. And you're in a crucial spot where you have the tying run on base, winning run at the plate. And they bring in a lefty pitcher to face Brandon Lau. You have three very capable right-handed batters. I realize Randy's not hitting it for average or hitting great right now. So you're probably looking at Rosario or Harold Ramirez, who have, if you look at Harold Ramirez's numbers as a pinch hitter,
They've been great.
oh, incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Rosario's been great against left-handed pitching and been pretty consistent all year. And Cash, for whatever reason, is the most stubborn when it comes to Brandon Lau. He hits him at the top in the top part of the order, no matter what. Unless it's the playoffs, then he bats him low, but he doesn't, and he sticks with him here. and I don't understand it. Like I get that he could potentially hit a home run over right field, but you're talking about a guy, his career numbers or his splits
Terrible.
this year against lefties. He has, I'm looking right now, he has 5 total at bats, 1 hit. I believe at the time, um, at that he didn't have a single hit against lefty. Not many at bats, but he doesn't have many hits against righties either. Okay, and he's like a career 200, maybe lower hitter against lefties. Like he's not somebody you even start against a left-handed pitcher. If there's a left-handed pitcher on the mound, I guarantee you tomorrow against Jesus Luzardo or against Garrett, Brandon Lyle's probably not seeing the field, right? He's not starting.
I
So
remember when you texted me this and I read it, and then I saw the replay of the game, and to me, it just Cash seems like he's just holding on hope, like Brandon Lau's like the savior of anything,
I
and
know.
like I know he makes these miscues once in a while, but either he's leaving him in there because hey, I'm gonna instill some confidence in him about getting the big hit, and I don't want to shake him up if I'm pitch hitting with somebody else, even though the matchup is not a good matchup at all. But maybe, just maybe, this is the time. This is the moment
Right.
where he's going to have that big hit against a lefty, and like it's like one of those miscues with Cash. It is frustrating because he doesn't make them often, but with this year it's been questionable managerial
Yeah, it's been a
moves.
sloppy year.
Yeah, it's just been like, are we really doing this right now? Where the offense is struggling almost every day, and I mean, also too, like sending guys when they shouldn't be sent for stealing. It's just like, what are we doing here? Like,
Yeah.
I know you're trying to grab runs wherever you can, but not when they're bonehead, stupid mistakes. And when it came to that move with leaving him in, it just, I think with Cash, it's almost like a confidence thing where if I have to pinch hit Lau with somebody else with a righty, I may shake him up a little bit. But like if I leave him in there and he gets that big hit, it's like, oh well, Brandon Lau's, he's still our guy. He's the dog.
Yeah, he's back.
He's back.
It just made no sense. I mean, in the context of the game too, because
and I get it too. I get it because when I looked at your text, I'm like, yeah, I
Uh,
totally agree with you. Why would he keep him in there?
the Rays were struggling to get runs, get anything going, and they got 2 ran on. It's the 7th inning. It's getting real late, right? Like,
Mhm.
and they did this against Cano too. Like, okay, we have something going here, and we're in the heart of the lineup. And you have a guy that you don't start against lefties because he doesn't hit lefties. He's never hit lefties. And they bring in a lefty to face him. And you have 3 capable right-handed bats, especially 1 or 2 in Ramirez or Rosario, that are really good against lefties. And I get it. Like they're probably not going to hit a home run to left field. And them going opposite field for a home run, probably not as likely as Brandon Lau potentially running into one over the right field wall. It doesn't matter. Like you just want to keep the inning going because guess what? Yeah, Isak Paredes right behind you, right behind Brandon, who's been your best hitter. So you get somebody up there that keeps the line moving so that Isak gets up with potentially bases loaded, runners in scoring position. Now you're maybe only down 1 run if the pinch hitter comes through. Like you have very obvious options there to go with. And then to make matters worse, Brandon Lau, of course, swings at the first pitch and pops up, and
Well,
it's
he's
like,
Carlos Pena 2.0.
yeah, but it's like, what's the point? Well, then, so he's like, oh, well, he, pulls a home run, a better chance of that. Like that was our best chance for, a home run to go up 1. It's like, okay, well, why does it matter? Why do we have to go for the lead in 1 at bat? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like you've never been a home run hitting team this year. So why are you banking on a home run or trying to go for that? Get the best hitter up there in the situation to keep the line moving. And I just feel like it was an obvious choice there. And I couldn't believe it when they allowed Brandon to hit, and I mean, I'm not surprised at all by the result. And then,
I don't think anybody was because everybody was
but
just like,
yeah,
okay, well,
it's like,
we all kind of knew this was going to happen.
but then in the 8th inning, the very next inning, uh, they go Paredes strikes out, Aranda grounds out, so it's 2 outs. DeLuca walks, so now the tying runs at the plate, and Richie Palacios is up, and he says, "Oh, you know what? That's the time. Let's do that now." Like, what? Because Colombe, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it right.
I think it's
Was
Colin.
he was still pitching, and so he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, this is the time because Palacios is a lefty. So let's bring in a pitch hitter because we got the tying run at the plate." And he brings in Randy. So he doesn't go to the better pinch hitters. He goes to Randy. Well, the Baltimore's like, all right, cool, bet we'll bring in Jacob Webb, who's a righty. So there goes your lefty, righty on lefty matchup. Like in the seventh inning when Brandon was hitting, they just brought in Colombe. So they have to keep him in. He's got to face three batters. The next three batters, you can have righties against their left-handed pitcher. And he says, that's when I'm going to stick with the
That's when
lefty
I want to
bat
make the
that
move.
can't hit lefties. And then to make matters worse, he pinch hits for Palacios in that situation because, it's a lefty pitcher. Let's get the righty bat up. Well, okay, now they bring in a righty pitcher to neutralize that. And then you like, oh, well, Richie was a lefty, so I get it. Career numbers as against left-handed pitchers for Richie Palacios, 36 at bats, 13 hits. So he's hitting 361 against lefties, 2 home runs. So you decided to pinch hit the one lefty that actually has shown, at least in a somewhat decent sample, to hit lefties, when you said, oh, you know what, we're going to leave the one lefty in that can't hit lefties on our team in this crucial scenario where supposedly he could hit a 3-run homer to go up for the lead. But when we're maybe tying the game in the 8th inning or whatever, this is the time we're going to switch it and we're going to go to the batter who's hitting 150. And then it's also the time where Baltimore can actually make the pitching change. Like there's no level of this that makes any sense. And it was just a complete, like, I don't know if they forgot, like,
I don't think they forgot, Drew. I think what you just kind of explained about that whole series of events kind of sums up the Rays season so far.
Yeah.
It really does. It really does.
And
I say that because of the miscues and the way we've been speaking about this team, it's like, who's the weakest link?
right.
The whole team has been the weakest link, and Cash kind of. I'm not saying Cash is a weak link, but it kind of adds to that. The manager's not on point sometimes, and it's been really sloppy overall with decisions on this. And it kind of sums up that where it's like, okay, we're in the scenario, and instead of doing it, you're almost flip flopping the scenario of where what you should have done that inning is in the wrong inning. You know what I mean? Like you should have done this in the like that. That to me, it just sums up like the whole. It just sums up the season.
I got real resentful because I was like, oh, now he decides, let's not go with the numbers. Let's go with the feel. Let's go with the gut. And I'm like, well, where was that in World Series Game 6 2020? Like, I mean, like, this is the game you say.
This is the game you don't look at the analytics, and the numbers.
Numbers be damned. We're going to go with the gut, with our feel. We think this is the guy that's going to be, the numbers don't say it, but anyway. So, and then, there was some other plays. I mean, much on a smaller degree, but I think there was a play on I think it was Saturday. Brandon Lau clearly forgot that there was only one out, thought there was 2 outs on a ground ball, could have easily turned a double play. And I think it was actually Sunday, and, could have turned a double play and threw it to first instead, like very clearly thought it was 2 outs, little mistakes like that. There was a pitch.
Why he's gone.
There was a pitch, Alex Jackson yesterday, where it's a full count, 2 outs. So the runner's going on contact
and
going on the pitch, and he popped up to try and the ball was borderline, and he catches it. Instead of worrying about framing the pitch because it's 3-2, 2 outs, he pops up and tries to get the runner out at second instead of framing. And we've seen so many times where catchers get so focused on throwing the batter or throwing the runner out that they get out of their stance, or they're not the way they receive the ball. It looks a little different. Like very obvious strikes will sometimes be called balls because the catcher just pops up and tries to gun the runner out. And so it's just like, did he forget the situation? Like little mistakes like that just, as a team that's struggling like the Rays, you can't keep doing that. Like you can't keep beating yourself with mental mistakes because you're not a good enough team to overcome them right now, especially against a team that's much better than you, in the Baltimore Orioles. So they scraped by with the win on Sunday. I'm so glad they did. They still have me hanging on for hope, barely. It very well could be like a bad showing over the next 2 weeks. And I'm saying, all right, let's get these young guys back up and get some of these pieces out and start thinking ahead for next year.
We'll talk to everybody after the Marlins series and see where we're at.
Yeah, Marlins and Baltimore. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, guys, we're going to wrap it up for tonight's episode of the Rays Rewind podcast, the sickest Tampa Bay Rays podcast, courtesy of the Sick Podcast Network. We'll be back next time for a new episode. For myself and Drew, see you guys later. Make sure you go to our YouTube page at the Sick Podcast, Rays Rewind. Subscribe, hit the notification bell.
See you.
Peace.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Rays Rewind with Buschman and Drew on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.